The Quit India movement. Imagine it's August 1942. Britain is fighting for its life in a world war, and just across India's eastern border, Japanese troops have already smashed through Singapore and Burma. Into this pressure cooker moment, Mahatma Gandhi stands up in Bombay and says just two words that would define the final chapter of India's freedom struggle: Quit India. Today, we are unpacking exactly how India got to that moment, why an offer of self rule from Britain fell apart, why a war thousands of miles away suddenly felt like it was next door, and why what happened next was called the most powerful mass upsurge since 1857. To understand 1942, picture the war closing in from two directions at once. In Europe, Britain was stretched to breaking point fighting Germany, and from December 1941, Japan had entered the war and was racing across Southeast Asia. India had been pulled into this war without anyone asking Indians whether they agreed, and that alone had already built up a huge amount of resentment. So Britain had a problem. It desperately needed India's material and manpower support for the war, and that meant it needed to offer Indians something. That something arrived in March 1942 in the form of Sir Stafford Cripps sent to India with a set of proposals. On paper, it looked significant. Cripps offered Indian dominion status, essentially self-governance, along with a new body that would draft India's own constitution. But, and this is the key thing to notice, every one of those offers came with a catch. The dominion status would only kick in after the war ended, whenever that might be. A province could simply opt out and refuse to join the Indian Union at all. And even during the war, defense of the country would stay firmly in British hands. Gandhi looked at all this and gave one of his most quoted lines. He called it a post-dated check on a crashing or a failing bank. In other words, a promise to pay you, drawn on a bank that might not even exist by the time you tried to cash it. So here's a simple way to remember why it failed. Think of it as the DIP test. Delayed freedom, only after the war. Incomplete power, Britain still held defense. And partition risk, the opt-out clause threatened to split the country before it was even free. At almost the exact same time, something else was happening that made this failure feel urgent rather than just disappointing. Singapore had fallen to Japan in February 1942, a colossal blow to the British prestige in Asia. Then Rangoon and the whole of Burma fell too, and suddenly refugees were pouring across the border into India itself. Put yourself in an Indian nationalist's shoes at that moment. The empire that claimed to be protecting you had just been humiliated by another Asian power, right on your doorstep. Many Indians started asking a very direct question. If the British cannot even defend themselves, how exactly are they going to defend us? And the logical conclusion many reached was only a free India in full control of her own army and her own decisions would actually be able to resist a Japanese invasion. So you have now got two forces pushing in the same direction at once: a diplomatic offer that had just collapsed and a military threat that made waiting feel dangerous. That combination brought the Congress leadership to Bombay on the 8th of August 1942 for the All India Congress Committee session, and there they passed what we now call the Quit India Resolution. The demand was blunt and immediate. Britain must leave India now, not after the war, not in stages. The method was to be a mass civil disobedience movement bigger than anything attempted before. And the spirit of it was captured in Gandhi's own words that night, when he told the country to be prepared to do or die. Do or die trying in the struggle for freedom. Britain's response was almost instant. Within hours, on the very morning of the 9th of August, Gandhi, Nehru, Patel, and virtually the entire senior Congress leadership were arrested. The Congress itself was banned and as an illegal organization. Public gatherings were outlawed, and in the weeks that followed, British cracked down hard. There was firing on crowds, mass arrests, and heavy collective fines on entire towns and villages. But here's the remarkable part. With almost every recognized leader behind bars, the movement did not die. It went underground and kept growing. Ordinary people, students, and local organizers picked it up. Railway lines were cut, telegraph wires were sabotaged, government buildings were targeted, all to paralyze British administration and communication. In a few pockets of the country like Ballia, Tamluk, and Satara, people even ran their own short lived parallel governments completely outside British control. So, why does this movement matter so much in India's story? First, in scale, it was the largest and most intense mass movement India had seen since the revolt of 1857, and unlike some earlier movements, it drew in villagers and city dwellers alike with unprecedented numbers of students and women stepping into active roles. Secondly, and maybe more importantly for the long run, it convinced the British that they simply could not hold on to India indefinitely against the will of its people. It exposed real cracks in the loyalty of Indian officials, soldiers, and police, the very people the empire relied on to keep order. And that shift in British thinking is exactly what set the stage for the negotiations that followed the war and eventually for India's independence in 1947. So, to sum it up in one line, a failed diplomatic offer and a very real military scare pushed India's freedom movement past its breaking point, and the response to quit India showed Britain once and for all that it was fighting a losing battle for control. Take a screenshot for the notes. If this helped make sense of 1942 for you, make sure to like the video.